Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars video. This is going to be my review for The Mandalorian Chapter 6. This one was called The Prisoner. And again, we've only got 2 episodes left in the season now, but I thought this was another good episode. I notice a lot of people, as every episode goes on, and we don't really get a big plot reveal or like character reveal, like they kind of grow a little bit more frustrated in a way. I've seen that from like certain sections of the fandom. For me, I'm kind of okay with that, while still sort of acknowledging that I am ultimately waiting for the show to do something like that, to reveal something new about the child, where it comes from, like someone to just ask the questions that I think we're all asking, or have a plot happen so that they're not just sort of on the run. But for now, I am perfectly fine with the show being just the Mandalorian trying to protect the child and keep things going, basically. In that it makes sense why he goes here, because he needs his ship repaired. He needs to go here to do a job so that he can, buy fuel, which is very expensive, or just buy food or something like that. Just the simple things. Like, I get it, like, this probably isn't a, style that you can keep up for seasons upon seasons. Eventually we are going to want something bigger to happen that we can latch onto, and you're eventually going to want to introduce some more characters who will stick around, will come back for more episodes, and they're not just focused on in one episode and then we move on. But at the same time, I do think that, like, Cara Dune, for example, I think she'll come back at some point. We'll see her again. I think we probably will likely get to a point somewhere down the line where the Mandalorian does have a crew of his own. Because again, he asked the Ugnaught guy from the earlier episodes, he asked him to join the crew. So like, he's not like averse to that completely. And especially if something sort of big happens and he has to sort of maybe take off the helmet. Maybe that's the point at which he'll decide that, like, he just needs the crew, and he'll get Cara Dune on his side, and we'll maybe introduce some other characters, and we'll go from there, because I think that's ultimately where we're heading. But what this episode did, I thought, was very interesting in that it was a kind of a heist. He teams up with a bunch of other mercenaries, bounty hunters, and they're just going in to get a prisoner out, and it's just a nice setup of just he's doing a job to make money. There's some nice references to, like, it's someone he's sort of run with in the past, and just even just the little character references here of the fact that, like, he's done all these things in the past where, like, he was maybe a little bit more of a wild character when he was younger, in that they imply he had the relationship with Xi'an before, the Twi'lek female character, and that he wasn't perhaps maybe as honorable in a way as he is right now, and that's just an interesting thing to think about, in that he obviously is meant to be kind of he's not meant to be seen as this like super young character, in that, like, we had the whole Gunslinger episode where he is the veteran bounty hunter, and so it's just the fact that he does have this sort of wilder history that he's sort of moved away from now, and him having the child sort of represents that to a degree. Again, like, we want to see more of the backstory with him, but they're doing a good job at just giving you the little bits and pieces that you need to just kind of stay invested. But yeah, the team we get introduced to here, we get Mayfeld, who's like just a kind of human sort of kind of firearms expert, I suppose is probably the best way to view him. We get a Deveronian kind of heavy guy here named Berg. We get Xi'an, who is the Twi'lek female, and then Zero, the droid. Obviously we get introduced to her brother later on, but he ends up not being the most important character, but they do a good job at just presenting a somewhat unique personality for all of these characters, without going overboard, because at least in a few of their cases they get killed off in the episode, and then the others are sort of left to maybe we'll see them again. especially Xi'an, because like she does have a history with the Mandalorian. I think we likely will see this group pop up again, and the fact that he didn't kill them when the episode led you to believe that he had was ultimately a pretty cool reveal, because the show had kind of killed off a lot of its other kind of one-shot characters before this, with the sort of bounty hunter, guild leader guy being the one like other character before this that they'd really done that with. So that'll be fun to see, like what characters they do and do not return to of the ones that they haven't killed off. But yeah, the mission here is to attack a New Republic prisoner ship that the information that they have says that it's just manned by droids, but they later find out that there is one kind of a human guard there. And it really plays into the idea of like, these are what you expect from typical bounty hunters, of just they're willing to go do what they need to get their pay and just make the mission happen. But you do see that, like as we've seen over like all of the episodes, the Mandalorian does have a code and doesn't want to unnecessarily kill people. He doesn't like droids, of course, because of his past and with the whole Clone Wars stuff and what the Separatist droid army did to him. But that was just well done. The difference between the two of them, of like, they're all sort of joking around about all the terrible stuff that they're going to do, and he's just sort of silently going along with them. He just wants to get the job done and get out of there. And it was honestly kind of, you really felt in a way for the Mandalorian just in some of those scenes where like they're clearly, kind of making fun of him. You can almost tell that they're kind of ganging up against him, that something is going to happen. And because he is the sort of more silent type, he's just sort of absorbing it all and kind of, going along with it because he sort of trusts his skills. And so when eventually the betrayal comes and they leave him in the cell when they get the other guy out, it's a pretty interesting moment, because you think the path they're going to take, again, because the show hasn't committed to a major plot point just yet, I thought the path they were going to take is that they ultimately were going to leave on his ship with the child, Baby Yoda, and then it would be the Mandalorian like having to chase them somehow, and that would be sort of maybe the next group of 3 episodes until the end of the season when he gets the child back. But no, instead they resolve it within the one episode of like, he's betrayed kind of halfway through the episode, and what this one is about is, he puts up with a lot of their kind of, almost like borderline bullying of him basically for the first part of the episode. But the second that they betray him, he unleashes the kind of revenge upon them, that the disrespect that they've shown him is now going to be kind of exerted upon them. And the atmosphere of the episode sort of changes after this point, especially when you realize that, like, oh, he has control of the ship because he's in the control room and he's locking down the doors, separating the rest of the group. He's the more sort of stealthy, overall skilled one, but he is still up against, skilled opponents. And so I like the way they did it, of like, oh, here's Berg coming after him, and the Mandalorian sort of miscalculates just how strong Berg is, and it seems like Berg has the advantage because he's stronger than him. He's like immune to fire. That was an interesting reveal about the Devaronian species, that they're kind of heat resistant basically, which was cool. Sort of makes sense with the colorization and the fact that like they're sort of like the devil man almost species. But the way he eventually defeats him, Berg is kind of like pushed into the door frame, and you think he's going to get crushed by the falling door, but then because he's strong, he just lifts it up. But then what you think happens when the other doors come across is that, like, oh, did they just like cut away because we just saw a character's like head get crushed by doors, and we don't want to see that. But by the end of the episode, of course, they reveal that this basically just knocked him out. That's what the Mandalorian did. He just KO'd everyone and put them in a cell. Because again, he doesn't want to unnecessarily kill people. So that was that was a cool reveal, because you thought that, and you almost understood why he would go as far as to kill the rest of them, but and he kind of didn't even like deny it when like he just alluded to the fact basically when he went back to the others that that's what happened, but then by the end they reveal that they're just in the cell. So that was an interesting reveal when they committed to it, and then of course you have him go after Xeon, and that was a cool little fight sequence of just like, of course she's throwing the sort of vibro daggers at him, and he obviously, any of them that just hit his armor just kind of bounce off, but then one of them does hit the gap in his armor, and so he does get sort of stabbed by one of these things. But the second he gets up close, the fight is over. So I thought they did that pretty well, of just that, like, if he didn't have the armor, he probably would have lost then and there, because her throws were so lethal. But again, you thought like, oh, is he just gonna like slit her throat here, and that's how she goes out? Because again, they cut away before you saw that finishing blow. In that, like, because he is the main character, he's meant to be like the hero of the story. Are they just not going to show him sort of brutally kind of killing these people? But that's why the reveal at the end was kind of so good, and that he still sort of maintained his sort of code in all of this, and not having to resort to being just killing everyone. With Mayfeld, I thought that was a really good one, in that Mayfeld's just kind of sneaking through the ship, trying to get one over on the Mandalorian, and he just like appears behind him, and as the lights kind of go in and out, you see him sort of like, the Mandalorian disappears then reappears, and he just appears right behind Mayfeld, and they cut away before you even see at all what has just been done. That was very well done. And it leads up to, of course, the idea that they get the prisoner that they were trying to get out, of course. He reveals he doesn't even care about his sister that much. He just wants to make sure he gets out free. So even though the others have been, quote-unquote, killed at this point, he's willing to make the deal with the Mandalorian of just, get me back and I'll make sure you get your money. That's the deal. You're honorable. You'll go through with the deal. And so you think, has he killed him? Has he just come back empty-handed? But no, he does bring him back. He gets his money from the other guy, but then as he's leaving on the ship, of course, the guy says, kill him. And so you think the platform, the station there, is going to fire on the Razor Crest and take him out. But this is when they did the plot point of the tracker kind of beacon that the Republic officer had. That if he activated it, it was a distress beacon for the New Republic military to arrive. And so he had activated that earlier on, and they set up this like timer that they've only got about 20 minutes before the New Republic arrive. And so everyone except the Mandalorian had kind of almost like forgotten about it, especially like once they get off the platform and they're on the ship. But it was an interesting one in that the Mandalorian is actually revealed to have put the tracking beacon on the prisoner, and so they think that they've got one over on the Mandalorian. They finally like taken him out, but then he reveals like, oh, what's this thing on my pocket? And they realize that they've just been had completely. And so as the Mandalorian goes into hyperspace and leaves, we see a squad of X-Wings come in, and it's a great cameo because you get three of the directors for the episodes of The Mandalorian. We get Deborah Chow, Dave Filoni, of course, and then the director of this episode as well. And they come in as a squad and just open fire on this station because they were just about to launch the ship that would take out the Mandalorian. And so, they were kind of justified in taking them out. Now, I don't know what they're going to do necessarily with regards to, like, did this episode confirm that just those two got killed, but actually the three back in the prison ship were the ones that survived, or somehow was the station just sort of wrecked, but they somehow still survived? I'm not sure. Either way, I think they got across the idea that, like, the guy they freed, the Xeon's brother, was like the worst of them all in a way because he was so kind of duplicitous, and then the other guy as well was a big kind of betrayer. And the other characters are definitely more of like, oh, okay, maybe they can come back and be useful in some way. We could see them again. But yeah, good episode. I really like the tension that they built here of just the betrayal early on in the episode. You think it's going to go one way, but then they just have it be the Mandalorian then coming back from this awful position to get the complete 180 reversal on them, and he gets it right. Baby Yoda did have a little bit of an arc in the episode, because the one thing I forgot to mention there was the other member of the team, the droid Zero, who they had actually had be the one to pilot the ship, because to dock onto the prison ship without being spotted, they had to do this kind of crazy maneuver with the ship that a human pilot kind of couldn't have done, which was this basically like come out of hyperspace and immediately like kind of dive bomb directly almost into the docking port. And so we saw him do that, and then he basically just stays back on the ship and runs kind of like comms and tracking everyone and so on. And it's at this point he begins to figure out that, oh, the Mandalorian has been like, exiled basically by the Bounty Hunter Guild, and we need to get one over on the Mandalorian because of what he's done. And then you get the whole idea that they'd seen Baby Yoda earlier on because of the scuffle before they got onto the station, but they're just like, oh, you have a pet and you're looking after it. That's a bit weird, but they don't really see it as being anything important because they don't know about the how big of a bounty is on like the child. And this is when Zero actually is the one who figures out that, oh, this is what he stole. This is what he took to betray everyone. We can get more money if we get this thing back and kill the Mandalorian. And so there is this, little bit of a kind of cat and mouse kind of plot with Baby Yoda running away from kind of Zero and just kind of hiding in parts of the ship. And finally, Baby Yoda gets kind of cornered by Zero, and he's about to use the Force, and then suddenly the Mandalorian appears behind. Nice little joke where Baby Yoda kind of looks at his hand and is like, did I just, create a hole in the middle of this droid with the Force? But he didn't even get the opportunity to use it because the Mandalorian came back to protect him. And then, nice callback at the very end of the episode. He takes the handle off the kind of shifter thing and gives it to the child and just says it was a bad idea to do this mission. Nice callbacks, another episode where we sort of end in that like this thing happened and then we move away from it. But it was still a very good episode, very Star Warsy, very bounty hunter, some nice reveals in that it was interesting to have sort of the New Republic play the role of sort of like the enemy to our group in this episode, in that the New Republic have these different types of droids on their ship, and I thought they got across pretty well that they weren't just, basic separatist battle droid like things. They weren't as big as super battle droids. They were sort of somewhere in the middle. They felt kind of, in terms of their power level, kind of commando droid from the Clone Wars kind of level, in that the rest of the group were sort of a bit fearful about taking on like a corridor full of four of them, but the Mandalorian was actually able to take the four of them out. Again, it was a bit of a kind of typical sort of dirty style fight that the Mandalorian has, where he gets bashed around a bit, but by using all of his gadgets, he eventually gets the kind of one-up on everyone. And that was a cool kind of showcase of his abilities overall. And just like seeing more New Republic stuff, because it really highlights that the sequel trilogy, where the New Republic is the thing, they really said nothing about it. And so this is one of our first times really seeing something that is related to the New Republic. Interesting just to see like, oh wow, they're the Republic, who you usually associate, or like the Rebellion transitioning into the New Republic, is usually something you associate as not being particularly like using droids in that way. But of course, when they're in power, they're going to have to do stuff like that, and it just is an interesting kind of point to have of like, if this was like a Clone Wars episode, you could have done very much the similar thing by just replacing like those droids with super battle droids. As it's a separatist prison ship, and it would have made complete sense. So it's a nice just role reversal. But yeah, that's my thoughts on this episode, episode 6 of The Mandalorian. I think the next episode is actually airing earlier next week because they didn't want the episode to come out on like basically the main like launch day of The Rise of Skywalker. So I think we're getting the episode Wednesday, which actually sort of works out a little bit better for me in that I should be able to uh, get my review out kind of day of pretty much. So that should be really handy for next week, in addition to Rise of Skywalker next week as well. So that's good. But yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.